Wake up, buyer payer people. It's a beautiful day. Go grab yourself another cup of joe and say hello to Jim and Michelle Rhoads on the Buy Here Pay Here Morning Show. Take it away, you two.
Hey, good morning, everybody.
Hello, happy Wednesday from
Happy
Utah.
Wednesday, yeah.
Beautiful colors here.
It is so nice. We spent a little bit of time over the weekend enjoying the fall colors. And we actually, first time this season, we went golfing on Monday. And I haven't been golfing at all this season.
Yeah.
Last year, I think I only went once or twice.
Yeah.
So it was so nice to get out and go golfing and enjoy the fall.
Yeah.
The shift into fall. So
yeah, we visited a favorite course that is really scenic. And
if you're in the Salt Lake area down in Springville, it's called Hobble Creek. It's really pretty.
Don't tell people.
Oh, okay.
We won't be able
Never
to
mind.
get a tea time.
That's right.
So forget what she said. No, it's all good. We went on a Monday so that we could get a tea time.
It was from where we live up way north of Salt Lake. It was about an hour and something drive to get down there. So, but it was really nice. It was good.
Yep. It's good to get out. And so we've got a week of yard work this week. We've got a big project. And
moved about a ton of rocks this morning.
That may be an
so it feels like it. So
well, we moved a bunch.
It's a good time of the year to do that because it's cool and nice mornings and all that. So
and we got plenty of ibuprofen. So it's all
we
good.
have. I already took a few before I even got started. Yeah. Yep.
So
okay,
shall we?
Announcements.
Well, today is LHPH
First
Capital.
day.
That's
Their
kicking off, and then I think
thing.
whatever the 5th is, that Friday would be the Florida conference. So at one point thought I might be in Florida to participate in that, but
it looks like we're not.
Had to postpone, so not there. But excited for those folks having their gatherings, and then otherwise we got a reprieve this week from V8. Dealers are pulling together their numbers. We're starting to see the numbers come in. From the month of September. Haven't looked at any of them yet, but that's starting to happen. So all good.
All good. And if you've been hearing about V8 and you're interested in doing that, there is room. We also have a lot of bandwidth to be able to add more groups.
Yep.
So
and a virtual way to get together and compare your numbers.
Very, very cost effective. And Jim was like on some of the meetings this last month, the people are home. They've got kids on their laps. They're paying attention to what's happening. One was at a baseball game and then transferred it into the car to go home, but was like they're engaged in the conversation, and they're also to be able to engage with their family, which actually segues quite nicely into our topic today.
Sure does. Yeah. So the topic is mustering the courage to pivot in your buy here, pay here operation. So it's like pivot to, from what and to what, right? So it would be the first thing. So for today on a White Hat Wednesday, we're not going to talk so much about the specifics of why a person might pivot. I mean, in general, we would say if I'm giving people an indication of when is it time to pivot, a real simple indication for me would be if you're looking at your equity on your balance sheet month over month and it's staying flat or decreasing, then it's time to make some changes. It's definitely time to make some changes. Now, so then that begs the question, what is it that, is keeping us from changing? Before we go into that, another scenario that could, if your trajectory of sales volume is not putting you in a place where you're going to attain positive cash flow, then that's a big problem. And that's one that needs fixing, in my view.
Yeah. So there's 3 big areas that you're like seeing this, that the being open to pivoting are really, it's a great idea. One is if you're not getting the sales volume you need to be able to cover your overhead.
Yeah. Well, to get to even
positive cash flow.
In operational positive cash flow, we'll call it.
Second is
equity. If your equity is decreasing, that's just an indication that you're not profitable. You're losing money, And so it's the simplest place to go. Now, this assumes that your accounting is correct. So, we got to make sure our P&Ls and balance sheets are correct.
Butler Sanchez is like, yes.
Yeah, right. So,
because there's a lot that's a whole nother thing. But yeah, accounting, making sure your accounting's correct.
I find that so few dealers manage their business from their financials. And there's a lot to learn there. Heck, I've got stuff to learn about.
Why is that important?
Why should we manage from financials? Just for those two reasons I mentioned. Really, the one is really related to financials. The other is more cash flow, which is that direct cash flow statement that you hear me talk about. Like, I would say that there are things that you can ride some waves. Like, if your portfolio is your performance dipping a little bit, that's something that you can correct, and you don't have to necessarily change your way of doing business or have a hard pivot anywhere. But with others, I would say that the financials, like we need to know our profitability, because one, it helps us project our own cash flow. But I would say and you got to be careful about timing on this. When you talk about our profitability on the P&L, is like, or on the, profitability on the P&L, which would translate into retained earnings or equity, that's accumulated on the balance sheet. And I'm just saying, if the balance sheet is shrinking, if the equity is shrinking, then it's definitely time to look at a plan B.
Or if it's just not growing, like you're wanting to shift into growth and you're doing different things, and it's like it's not growing the way you want it to grow. And that's kind of like comes into this topic of, if that's happening, then there's we've had different clients, we've watched different things where it's like you're continuing to do the same thing and it's not working.
Right.
It's just not working. It's you're decreasing, or you're not getting the growth or whatever, and it's just not working. So I think what we're kind of boiling this down to is there's a lot of things that we can do to change within the dealership. But we're getting down to what shifts does a dealer need to make, or having the courage to make shifts that change how you approach things.
Well, maybe to answer that, we need to first talk about, why did we choose the words courage? Why does it take courage to pivot?
Because, can I give you my, it kind of ties into a couple of things. Insanity is doing the same thing and expecting a different result. We get stuck in our ruts, and we get stuck in, this is the way we do it, that we get stuck in, and we have all of the reasons why it should work. And it might have worked in the past.
Right.
And so we kind of like, this is the way we do it. This is the way we do it. This is our business model. This is the way we do it. This is how, we hand our underwriting. This is the way we do it. And all of these things. And when you see something changing and you've added, we've watched dealers where they're adding new software or they're whatever. And so they're trying to find the magic bullet. And sometimes if you've added the things that can really help you streamline and help you be able to get the things done, it might be time to look inward.
Yeah. And I think for today, what I want to do is I want to shift away from operational thinking. I want to shift away from the nuts and bolts, the X's and O's, the execution of day-to-day business. And ask ourselves, because you're right. We meet people in my career. I've met so many people. Just, the answer is, well, that's the way we've always done it. And that answer for you and me is never going to be good enough. Like that's not enough reason to stay on a track. And
unfortunately, what we have seen way too many times is that a dealer gets backed into a corner with a lion in front of them before they're willing to look at it that way.
That's unfortunately too true.
It is too true. And it's like where you're like, oh shit, oh shit, oh shit, oh shit, oh shit. And we've watched dealers do that because they get into their rhythm and this is just the way we do things. And they might be adding, we've seen dealers where it's like, we're in really fat cash flow. And so my mother-in-law needs a job, and we want to be able to pay her to help her since she's had to retire, or, all sorts of different things. And so you give her a little menial, something to do, and you're forking out money to help support other households. That's just one thing that we've witnessed too, where it's like, I don't have the cash flow and there's way too much going out. And so what do I need to do to change this?
So that's an example of where, there's operational, which would be buying cars, financing cars, collecting car payments. And then there's all that money you're talking about that's flowing, that's off of the operation, right? And so there's use of funds that is one of the areas that we see dealers get in trouble. But I think that's not really the object here today, for me at least. It's just to kind of help dealers think through, okay, let's say you're in that group of dealers who just recognize that you're not getting ahead. You thought by now you'd have 400 accounts and you only have 200, whatever the number is. And so you realize you're just kind of spinning your wheels a little bit and you're not getting to where you want to be. And so this is the part where I think we want to break down. And I think on White Hat Wednesday, what you're going to hear us talk a lot about going forward, and you've heard it plenty in the past, is like the squiggly lines of this. Like, forget for a minute the black and white X's and O's. Like I said, as far as I should buy a different car, throw all that stuff out the window for just like 10 minutes. And let's just think about,
or maybe 20. Okay.
Yeah, maybe. So the idea here is that for us to really start to solve the problems in our businesses, let's say get beyond buy here, pay here, beyond lease here, pay here, for us to be able to, there's some ego involved. There's some fear. And dealers do not want to admit fear. Yeah. Right. And that's okay.
Fear is, they just like, that's weakness. And I'm a, big, I'm a strong business owner, and I can, all of this.
So if I'm sitting here, I'm the advisor, you're the dealer, and you're sitting here saying, well, it's not working, my equity is decreasing, and blah, blah, blah. And you're saying, but I'm not prepared to shift my pricing structure, or not prepared to add another tier of financing, or I'm not prepared to, go a different direction. You have to ask yourself, so I'm sitting here hearing you say that, and I'm thinking, what are you afraid of? Right? What is it that you fear that is going to happen from you shifting to this other place? So I think that's the piece, regardless of what the action is, like what's preventing you from taking action?
I think that just from my perspective, there's a couple of things that I've witnessed. One is fear that your team's going to get pissed.
Okay.
So it's because I've seen too often where the team really is the one that's calling the dealership, or that they have a
really strong influence.
They have a strong influence on what decisions the dealer makes for their business. So I've seen that multiple times, that kind of thing. And I think too is, I think that sometimes when things start going in a direction that you're not comfortable with, you kind of get, it's like there's a paralyzation of some kind that it's throwing the same thing at it. It's like, oh my gosh, oh my God, oh my gosh, oh my gosh. And you don't want to change anything because, you don't want to irritate your team or whatever. Things that are really, really hard.
Right.
And then, that it can turn into something where it might be, and we've witnessed this too, that it's not the team, but it's like, you have to change. You have to be willing to say, I can't do things myself the way that I've always done it. Right. Like relying too heavily on a team member or
and I would change, it's a hard thing. Ask dealers to contemplate in that phrase that you just said, I can't do this. I would ask dealers to invoke the language won't.
Yes. Oh yeah.
Such a big difference
that
between
can't is what happens when you're in the corner and it's oh shit.
Yeah.
And if you can catch it before that, then it's I won't. Not I can't. I won't do it anymore. I won't do it anymore. I won't do it anymore.
It's about having that sort of leadership. And sometimes again, these dealers are backed into a corner. If we're thinking about our segment of buy here, pay here, lease here, pay here dealers, we meet a lot of them, and some of them are doing great, and some of them are struggling, and what have you, and some of them are new and just haven't figured it out yet, whatever the case may be. But I think when we see that dealer whose business is struggling, okay, and regardless of how long they've been in business, when the business is struggling, we have to first, as dealers, have to take some leadership direction. Because when I ask the question, what are the sources of the fear? Like what's causing the fear? Then I want to also in the same phrase or in the same breath, ask, what are the voices that are you hearing? Whether
Yeah.
they're outside your head or inside your head, what are the voices that are driving you to decide to stay on the same track?
It's an interesting thing, and you've talked to multiple dealers about this, and it's like, then it's an interesting thing to observe. It seems like the biggest fear is I'm not going to sell, that I'm not going to sell.
Produce volume.
And you have so many times talked to dealers and said, what is the worst that's going to happen to your business if you don't sell anything for the next 2 months and get whatever it is that needs to get taken care of internally so that you can hit it running again? And that there's just like, I can't do that.
That's
I can't
getting
do
into
that.
straight lines. That's
Yeah.
getting into straight line stuff. And I think, how do you go about moving from where you are to where you need to be?
It's a temperature check on how much a dealer is willing to shift into something that's uncomfortable,
Right.
to make changes so that that takes a lot of courage.
Sure.
to make changes like that. So, or decide that you're going to move forward in doing something big like that, because it takes you completely out of your comfort zone.
Yeah. It's worth mentioning that when we wrap up here today, we've got a meeting after with some people that do estate planning and sort of financial planning beyond, the kind of work that we do. And we sometimes walk dealers right up to the edge of that conversation about life insurance and making plans for family and that sort of thing. But we're meeting with some people there. So it's kind of, for me, it's the reason that's significant is when I think about these dealers that are sometimes on that hamster wheel, right? And they're afraid to jump off because it's all they know, right? And so they're nervous about making a pivot, right? And so I'm simply saying that if you have identified that what you're doing is not working, especially when I think about the voices, like for me as a business coach, I work with the principals. I work with the dealer principal. That's who I'm responsible for. That's who writes the checks, and that's who I'm trying to improve their life experience, their business experience. And so when I hear all these other voices of static on the perimeter, I don't have to respond to those. The dealer sometimes does, and I need to understand what those voices are that are, in this case, in this context, would be, what are those voices that are keeping you from being able to take this step? Because my feeling is a simple one. It's like my view of the whole thing. Yeah, it's like, when what we have is not working, then I view making a decision to take a step in a certain direction. I don't view that as being much risk. What are we really risking? We're stepping away from something that's not working. We're stepping in a new direction. The new direction might not work any better, but we know that staying where we're at serves us not at all, right? It's like it doesn't serve us to stay where we are because we're not getting to where we meant to be. And so I think this is the part that I think dealers, business owners too. It's like what we're talking about here is like, and look, I've been there, as a business owner myself. We still have a business, and we have to make difficult decisions sometimes, right?
Well, and that's thank you for adding that in there, because I mean, there's been times where we're like trying to get to the next step, and we keep moving forward, and we keep doing the same things, and it's like getting to the point where, okay, doing it this way isn't working for us anymore, and having the courage to say, okay, then we're going to shift and do something different.
Yeah. And I don't recall if we've done a podcast topic on this or if I wrote an article, but I've always talked about the high price of inaction. Right. And so this is kind of this area where I think when we're in this place where we are, you use the word, paralysis or whatever, when we're paralyzed because we don't know anything else, and we're not ready to hear the grumbling voices of our team who, have to adjust to something different and experience some change, then, it causes us to be paralyzed and not take action. And I think this is where I would just say we sometimes we put ourselves in a place where there's nothing really to be afraid of. We have this fear in our head, but if from the outside looking in, if I'm looking at the dealer in that situation, I said, I'd be afraid to stay where I am.
Yeah. And
you know what I mean?
Yeah, I do. Just in general, we're going to not really squirrel possum, which means it's related. is that we, we move forward and we oh criminy,
You
I
lose the thought.
lost it. Yes,
Oh,
I haven't
I
had
hate
any.
when that
Yeah.
happens. You mean bring you
Um,
some coffee?
I may have
Yeah.
to have you get me some coffee because
You'll think of it right
it's
when I'm in the middle of the next thought.
and I'll be like, what?
Yeah.
Let me share
Yeah.
what I wanted to say.
No, I think we kind of covered the pieces that I wanted to cover in terms of helping dealers just first. When is it time to take
Oh,
some
I
action?
remember what it
Oh,
was.
good.
Is that I kind of go woo. That's woo. You all know who woo woo is. I'm not a little. I'm like straddling woo and not woo. Straight lines and woo. And fear, or when we feel uncomfortable, what I've observed and see is that is our internal self is something's not right. Something needs to shift because that's not our natural state. That's not how we are designed to live, in fear or in apprehension or in a high level of like the kind of stress that you experience when it's like things are not working right. And so those emotions and those feelings are yourself saying, danger, Will Robinson, something is off track, something is not right, something is not right. And when you layer on doing the same thing and expecting a different result, it's like you're being called to do something different. You're being called because what you're doing is not in alignment with who you are and how you want to show up and how you want to feel in your business, in your home life, in your whatever. So it's like when you start feeling those things, it's a really good time to go in and to like, why am I feeling this way? Why? What is the root cause of the fear? And, from experience with the things that I've been working on myself with, I've had a lot of different health problems and things. And I believe that health problems are also a direct relationship to how our guidance systems, our operating system is offline. It's not, we're not doing it the way that we're intended, way we were designed to do it. And so taking that and going inward and asking yourself, why am I afraid? And then make the choice as you peel one layer off after another, is like, go deeper. What am I afraid of? Why is this thing that I'm afraid of true? Is it true? Is it not true? And then deeper and deeper and deeper, because when we can look at those things that make us uncomfortable,
right,
and just stop and be quiet for a second and start to ask ourselves, because our internal guidance system, which sometimes we get so many different static operating systems that are they're just creating so much havoc to what it's like a virus, and so when we have all these different belief systems and things like it has to be this way, it's holding us back from how we being fearless, being having a sense of peace, because being fearless and having peace is really what we're designed to be.
Sure. I mean, regardless of what business we're in,
Yeah.
I mean, that should be the case. So I think, when you and I talk with new dealers, earlier stage dealers, we often take them through an exercise of Cameron Harold's Vivid Vision.
Yes.
And when we do that, we ask them to take a break and find some time away from the dealership.
So essential.
Yeah. And so if I bring that to this conversation and I say, if I'm a dealer who's just looking at my business and I'm facing some realities in the quiet moments, everybody's gone home and I'm looking at our financials and looking at our updated stuff, or maybe it's over the weekend. And I'm just saying, if I'm in a place where I recognize that what I'm doing is not working, then I would challenge dealers who find themselves in that place to make some time to get away from the building, take a notepad, take a tape recorder, whatever. Your phone is a pretty good tape recorder these days. Take otter.ai. You can get the app and record and transcribe at the same time. But the main thing I'm trying to get to is I'm going to ask dealers to go and take a notebook and go find some quiet time and ask them, what's keeping me from fixing this thing?
Because you have the capability.
Yeah.
That's
so forget
the thing.
forget the nuts and bolts, the X's and O's. I'm not talking about that part. I'm saying really there are 3 elements that I would ask you to examine. How much is ego a factor in what is going on? Like, is it my own ego and my own resistance to change because I can't accept, and I can't publicly accept to my team that my strategy was wrong? That would be ego that would sometimes be preventing us from being able to step forward and say, I was
What
wrong.
will people think?
Yeah. So we have to ask ourselves, is that a limitation?
That is a strong guide. That's a strong virus in our guide, in our programming.
Sure.
That's a strong virus. What will people think?
Yeah, for sure.
And feeling like I'll be shamed. I'll be embarrassed.
Yep.
I will look like a failure, whatever.
So that's ego. That's
ego.
kind of limiting our ability to navigate these important decisions. The other piece that I would ask you to look at is just the fear factor that we talked about. Like, where's the fear coming from? What am I afraid of in my business? If I know I need to go in a new direction because I know that where I'm at is not working. What is it that I fear is going to happen? What are the voices that I'm hearing? And then all of this is really, and then the last piece would be, what's keeping you from trusting the people that can drive the piece? So sometimes it's really kind of in the context of this hamster wheel thing we talk about. Dealers have a hard time stepping off the hamster wheel. Why? They feel like they have to be the one in the building driving the thing. Why? What are we afraid of? What keeps us? Because that often what you and I see across the industry, and this is not just true of buy here, pay here, lease here, pay here dealers, like when businesses have growth stunted, it's often because they're trying to do everything themselves. So there's a trust element there. What can I do myself internally? This is all about taking some time quietly, looking inward and saying, what do I need to do to be able to start to trust my team and allow them to execute on the things? If I got the wrong team members, I got the wrong team members.
Yeah,
right?
and understanding that the answer to that question might be a little bit of work.
Yeah.
But having the courage to, okay, I need to change this, and I'm willing to do the thing even if it ruffles feathers or whatever. And I would challenge dealers that in business, a team wants an effective leader. They want someone who is is sure of themselves and the team can see things improve too. And so, and I've experienced this in my whole career, is you might have an initial ruffle, and that might be a weeding of those that can't handle not having their way.
Right.
But if you make a change and you just like, hey team, let's, stick with me for the next 3 months. Let's see how this shifts out or whatever, if it's a big change. And then I would challenge dealers to have the courage to do it, because frequently your team will have more faith and have more trust in you as a leader when you make the hard choices, and they may not understand why, but that just
as an aside,
and watch it start to initiate change within the business, positive change.
I think it was Simon Sinek who told the story about Steve Jobs and Apple having to make a really hard pivot, and the team was like, wow,
we can't do that.
They had lots of reasons that it shouldn't
and
work.
He did.
He did it, and it worked out, and it changed their company. So I think this is an example of really specific pivots that you have to make and have to have the courage, and the leadership was part of it. Vision obviously was part of it in that story. But I guess where I'm going here is that when dealers find themselves in this place, it's important to find some time alone, and that time is about you. It's not about your team. It's not about your real estate. It's about you. Like, what do you want this business to be, and how can this business serve you? Not the other way around. So we talk about being tethered to business, and I've stood in front of audiences of dealers and said, do you own your business, or does your business own you? So it's like, if I can ask dealers to say, if we're about to pivot, if we know that what we're doing is not working and we need to step in a new direction, then I would say, let's look inward first. Let's take some time and look inward and say, what would serve me? What would help me to create a business that is going to, have more, is going to serve me better. Some that might be financial, it might be other elements, right? But it's like, it's going to serve this. And then you bring the team in. We meet a lot of dealers who they defer to their team and this and that, and they're very sensitive to their team members and payroll and all this stuff. And I think, while it's admirable, if the thing is not working, it's not working.
Well, and there's a difference. I've worked in I love startups, and I look at buy here, pay here dealerships. It's like startups that just are continuing to start up. It's because there's, and with a startup, as you watch it develop into like a strong business, that you're like the leader of your business is always held in a level of respect within the business, that if they came in and said, we're going to shift something, that everyone would be like, tell me how. What do I need to do? And in big businesses, if they want to shift something and people, it's like, oh, okay, would you feel better somewhere else?
Right.
Oh, okay. Because keeping the idea or the belief that this is your business.
Yeah.
And it's the equity that you have with your team is fantastic, but they're not the drivers.
They're not the one whose signature's on the line of credit or on the mortgage on the building, or
exactly. And so a business leader listens to his team and like, give me ideas, but they get to make the decision. That's it, because it's their business. And so sometimes you can get to a point where you've got a CEO or a general manager or whatever that it's like, I feel good about stepping back. But if things start to go off rail, you can step in with that CEO and say, we need to make a shift because this isn't working. And having that, dealers having a finger on the pulse, and having that courage to be able to make hard decisions and do shifts creates a level of trust within your team. And people they'll shift with you if they can see that you're making business choices that are actually helping the business. You're going to weed through those that just want their way, but you're going to have even more loyal employees.
Yeah. And I would just say, the one thing I would add to the phrasing, like when you said, we need to make a change, I think the phrasing that I would choose instead is, I'm making this change. And the management might come back and say, but we need to do this, and this. And my phrasing will be, I won't do that anymore.
Well,
I'm making this change, and here's why. It's not that I'm not involved.
But you're going to say why.
Yeah. It's not that there will come a time when I'm looking out for the business, and I appreciate your input. I've made the decision. I typically, when I'm having this, I would have already received the input from the team, right? And so it's not that I'm shutting them out, but there comes a time when it's my signature on the debt. I'm doing what I think is best for this business. And, you obviously, as a leader, you have to be able to convey the vision and get people behind the vision. But it's like, as I said, if what we're doing is not working, it's not working. We don't have much of a risk that we're taking when we take a step in a new direction. Now, measure it. We're going to measure the results and verify that what we've taken a step to do is producing results. And we can always take another step. We can always choose to go in another direction if the new step doesn't work. But we're taking almost no risk by stepping in a new direction if where we're at today is not working. That's the part that I think is so important to get people comfortable with the idea that, what am I afraid of? I'm stepping away from something that's not working. Right?
Yeah.
I'm stepping in a new direction.
A really great example. And it's interesting that they're starting their conference today. That I've seen in the industry, Terry Bowdler, who is the owner of LHPH Capital, I've been able to sit back and watch he and Tim Lawrence and their relationship. And there is There it is. That to me is goal. That is for every dealer to be able to have a relationship like what I observed from Terry Bowdler and Tim Lawrence,
Okay.
where there is such a high level of
I
respect
don't
both
think you
ways.
said LHPH Capital, so people know
LHPH
who you're talking
Capital.
about.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, I said they're about ready to
Okay.
start their conference, but we've sat in meetings with both of them, and Terry is he isn't there every day. I mean, he's there, and people are aware, and people know him, and people respect him. He's built one hell of a business, and he has a lot of respect for Tim Lawrence, and to see them sitting next to each other, and it's Terry's the first one to give his input, and then he will ask Tim, what do you do you see challenges? What do you see? And be able to watch those two, where Tim is kind of the face of the business right now, but it's like, watch them, and there is such an incredible amount of respect from Tim to Terry. And it's the most beautiful thing to watch, because I know that if Terry came in and said, Tim, we need to shift, Tim would say, tell me what we need to shift and I'll make it happen.
Yeah. Okay.
That's the kind of general manager. That's the kind of partner, a dealer, as being a business owner. When you've got your CEO and you've, founder or the business owner and your CEO, it's like that kind of level of respect. And part of that is that Terry is willing to make the hard choices. He is someone that we have watched him throughout his career. And from the stories, he's not afraid to pivot. He's not afraid to do the things that are hard to be able to make the next thing happen.
Well, maybe it's appropriate on a Wednesday to wrap up by saying, I've always believed that respect and trust have to be earned,
Yes.
So the fact that relationship looks the way it does, it means that respect and level of trust has been earned between the two of them. And I think back to our conversation here with the dealers is like, if that level of trust is there, wonderful. But I'm simply saying I have to put out all the noise. I have to do what's right for me and my business. And I'm going to come back and I'm going to share with the team, this is why we're going this direction. And it's up to me to sell the new vision. And it's up to me to be a leader and drive the team to achieve the thing. If I don't succeed in that, I must not have earned the trust and respect. Right. And so that's, if I have to own that, if that's my position in the situation, then I have to own that and deal with the consequences. But I think for today, it was just about helping dealers recognize that if what we're doing is not working, and we gave you two reasons in a buy here, pay here, lease here, pay here model, that I would say that these are indications that it's not working. If you're going backwards on your equity, then I would say that's a pretty good indication that it's time to look at something different or additional. Okay. It doesn't have to be that you shift a whole model, but you may need to add some other pieces to your business. And then, the other pieces would be just if we see that we're not producing enough volume to reach our target, we need a trajectory to reach positive cash flow, in my way of coaching and thinking about the business.
Or growth, whatever. Yeah.
Or growth. So it's not about profitability in that stage as much as it is about positive cash flow. So there's going to be a balance, right? Your CPAs can help you figure that piece out. But most dealers who are doing enough volume to reach that positive cash flow are going to not have a profitability problem. But if we find ourselves in that situation where we're just not getting there, we're not creating the volume, then we here's the reality. We have to quit being married to our business model. We might have to divorce our business model.
Absolutely. 100%. And this is like general business. This isn't, and we use cash flow and all of that as terminology within our industry, but this is business.
Right.
This is not just buy here, pay here. This is do we have a job that we've created for ourselves, or do we have a business that we've created?
Sure.
And this is running a business.
Correct.
This is running a business.
Right. Putting aside figuring out where's the fear coming from. What are we afraid of, and taking the business in a new direction? Are we navigating from ego, and can we in a little quiet moment allow ourselves to get past that and put our ego aside and
look at what we're afraid of.
Yeah. Do what's best for ourselves and our family and our business, right? Pretty much in that order.
Yep.
Right. And so obviously people can look at the family element and make sure that there's time involved here, not just dollars, right? The value of time with families is going to be important. And then the last piece is just trust. I mean, do I trust my team to be able to execute on this new plan? And do I trust myself to, in a way to execute on this new plan? And so these are all pieces that I think it just takes a little quiet time. hop off the hamster wheel, maybe, skip a Saturday football game or whatever. And so just find some time.
Going back to that like operating system and that fear is a way to say we're not in alignment. We're not. And that fear is not to say you're doing the wrong thing. If you're afraid of like moving forward and it's like, that scares me to death. It's looking at the barriers to you being able to make good, solid business decisions. What are you afraid of? Because those fears, that is the stuff that needs to be addressed. It's like, let's get rid of that fear and move forward in a positive way, because those fears are, fears can be that I am moving in the wrong direction, but fears can also be what is holding me back. And that can be a belief or a belief structure that is no longer serving you.
And it's might like, not even be true.
It might, and most of the time, it's not even true.
We've created this.
Oh my gosh. How often do we get all worked up? It's like someone's going to be mad at me, or we're holding this thing. And then you with a person or whatever, and you run into them 6 months later, and it's just like, hey, Jim, how you doing? And you're like, crap, I thought you were mad at me. Or you should be ashamed of yourself because you
don't make it about me.
I'm just using names because you're the first person I looked at. So it's like, look at those beliefs that are holding you back from making the hard and the right decisions for your business.
Okay, good.
So, and it's White Hat Wednesday. I brought in Terry and Tim from LHPH Capital. They are one of our founding sponsors to White Hat Way, as well as Pastime and Dealery.
Yep.
And so we just want to give them a huge shout out and a thank you for being sponsors,
being a supportive of the mission,
being supportive of the mission. And so it's just, one of the reasons why we did choose them as founding sponsors, especially when I look at that Terry and Tim, is because internally they have great pieces and they work really well as a team, and it's just fun to watch them as a team. They like each other. They have a high level of respect for each other and also for their leadership. It's pretty awesome. So, hey, everybody, thank you for joining us on this White Hat Wednesday. We hope you guys have a great rest of your day. We'll be back on Friday with a straight line topic. And we've got lots of stuff that we're on our way out to go take care of. Lots of yard work projects. Don't forget to take your ibuprofen, Tylenol.
If I'm not back here Friday, you'll know I didn't survive the yard project.
Well, I'm glad that I did the ibuprofen early. All right. Thanks, everybody.